मास्तु मा विद्विषावहैः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Okay, so the next verse is verse 14. It says, Devi hesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mame vaye prapadyante mayam etam taranti te. So to understand all the different aspects of Ishvara, which then also the fact that pervading everything, Ishvara is free from everything, right? So to get all the nuances of what Ishvara is, right, it takes time and it requires contemplation, and also to incorporate this new vision in your decision making and get yourself aligned. The whole thing is what? An effort. It's not going to happen overnight. So this is what he says, that Devi Hesha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratyaya. So this, it's very difficult to cross this, because this three guna and interaction within forms is something that everybody does. And nobody is used to seeing something which is other than that. So here he says that it's difficult to cross what this Maya. So now we have to first understand what Maya is. Okay? So as I told you that Ishvara, this intelligence, is not only what you find in the manifest universe, but it is also in the unmanifest. Right? So while the universe is manifest, itself there is a shift, constant shift from manifest and unmanifest. But before this manifest universe came, there is also what? This potential. And this potential is called Maya. Now, so that means there is intelligence, but what is not there is what? Space, time and forms, names and forms are not there. Okay? So, from this potential comes the manifestation. So when the manifestation comes, what comes? Time, space and objects. They come into manifestation. Now, so the Maya has twofold, it's a potential, but it has twofold capacities. One is what we call Vikshepa Shakti, that is what? To manifest the whole universe. That is called Vikshepa Shakti. From the potential it manifests. Just like even within the manifest universe, the seed has a potential to manifest the tree. Right? And the entire design of the tree is somehow kind of programmed inside the seed. But it has not yet become manifestation, but it has the potential to manifest. Okay? So similarly, at the level of the before the entire manifestation, this intelligence has a potential to manifest as what? Time, space and all the objects. Now, if all the objects, they know that all that is here is one which is manifesting as many, then will there be any problem? No. But this reality is covered. So that means Maya has the second power, and which is what we call Avarana Shakti. Avarana Shakti means the reality is covered, veiled from our understanding. So therefore, everybody what continues to live thinking that I am separate. But one thing is very important, it's not only the reality of the nature of I is covered, but when you are born, everything is covered from your understanding. right? It's not only the reality is covered. So the knowledge of science is covered, knowledge of math is covered, knowledge of arts is covered. You go to school, you join what primary school, and you begin to learn everything. So it's nothing to do with only this knowledge, everything is covered. But you have the capacity to know, the mind has been given the capacity to uncover it also. There is a potential that is also available as a potential. So when you go to school and you discover so many things, biology, chemistry, physics, mathematics, history, geography, everything. What geography means, all the countries are there, they have different climates, all that is already there, but it is what veiled from you. So what do we do when we go to a school or college? What we lift our veils. We begin, things are already there, right? What we do is just lift the veil. Through how do we lift the veils about things of the universe? We study things, and for that study we use two main pramanas, two means of knowledge. One is what we call perception, which is what gained through our five senses, and based on perception there is inference, right? So we use two very important methods to learn things about the world. Perception and inference. Now the perception itself is divided into Indriya Pratyaksha and Sakshi Pratyaksha. Indriya Pratyaksha is you get the data through your senses, right? And the second thing is what? Sakshi Pratyaksha. What is Sakshi Pratyaksha? Where you come to know things which are going on in your mind. So that means I am feeling sad, I am feeling happy. All these things, you don't need your eyes to figure out, am I feeling happy or sad? Do you need your eyes or any sense organs? You don't need them. So whatever are the activities of the mind or the changing moods of the mind, changing thoughts of the mind, these are all what we call Sakshi Pratyaksha, witness perception. You don't need your senses. So the perception itself is divided in two parts. Then, based on perception, you also can infer many things. What is the inference? So the classic example in Vedanta Shastra is that you see the smoke and what do you infer? Fire. You infer there is fire. So your perception is that of smoke, but what you come to know is the existence of fire. Now, many times we infer things and our inference could be little wrong. So for example, I see tears in your eyes and I infer what? That you are sad. But you can have tears out of joy. Or just sometimes, exactly. So that means there are other reasons also why you can have tears. So that means in order for my anumana to work, right, there has to be one condition which has to be met, and which is what we call invariable concomitance. Invariable concomitance means that yatra yatra dhumaha tatra tatra vanhihi. Wherever there is smoke, what? There has to be a fire. If there are some conditions where there is smoke but there is no fire, then what will happen? My inference will go wrong. Because by seeing the smoke, I can infer the fire, but if there is some other reason why there is fire, then a smoke, then my inference is wrong. So this is why in order for our inference to really be valid, there has to be this condition. What? Invariable concomitance. Otherwise, many things we infer which is wrong. Right? So, this is how we get to remove the ignorance about things and learn things. Now, what is important here is many things that we come to know through our pratyaksha pramana, which is the perception, is actually at times contradicted, right, by inference, in which case what stays? Inference will stay, right? So for example, before even going out and looking at anything, the perception for everyone was what? That the sun rises in the eastern sky and it sets in the western sky. So for a long time everybody believed, because that was a perception, everybody perceived that. Then somebody discovered that actually the sun is stationary, it is the earth which is moving. So now we do have a perception, right? But how is it that there is the inference is what negating the perception? So when it is in fact it is not negating the perception. Perception remains of what? The sun rising in the eastern sky and setting in the western sky. But the conclusion is negated. What is negated is conclusion that the sun actually moves around. Actually what moves is the earth, right? So this is how we constantly keep refining our knowledge base. Many things that we thought was right, which is based on our perception, if subsequently through reasoning, if they are proved to be wrong, we continue to have the same perception, but our conclusions change. Right? But the entire process goes on through two major pramana. That's how you keep on revising. Science thought what? The space and time is absolute. Then revision. The space and time is relative. Even when Einstein himself discovered that, he himself was amazed. Right? So this is how there is a constant revision, but the data is always coming from where? Perception. The basic data comes from perception, which is what? Your five sense organs. And based on that...
may also wrong.
Exactly. Perception itself can be wrong. Yeah. As in the example of a rope snake, right? There is a rope and you see a snake. So that means that your perception can be wrong, or your perception can be valid, but it may not be in keeping with the truth. So many visuals. So now,
actually that is a perception.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a perception. The perception is correct. The conclusion that the sun is actually moving is wrong. The perception is true. Not everybody perceives. Yeah, everybody sees. The conclusion is right. So this is how we keep on revising. So many things that we believed for a very long time, when you come, you have more sophisticated reasoning, it gets revised. Now, through this process, we come to know things. So now, for example, what is a method? When Einstein discovered that the time and space is not absolute, but it is relative, you think everybody just said, yeah, because it's Einstein who's saying it, and therefore let's just accept it? No. Einstein has to stand in front of whom? All the very well accomplished scientists. And then what people question him and he has to show.
He proved some
mathematical formulas. Right? Through this method, you actually can then what people have to revise their opinion. They can't hold on to what they think. This is how when that happens, when he is communicating to others, there is a methodology. As Kashi said, through series of formulas and all, mathematics and all, he would show, right? So therefore, this is what we call that leads to a methodology of communicating. In that very proof is the methodology of communicating this vision. So now, when you're going to a college and studying, let's say, a theory of relativity, does Einstein have to come and speak in front of you? The teacher can explain, but how does the teacher explain?
Using the same methodology.
Exactly, using the same methodology. The methodology is the key, because you have to prove, and there are steps, logical steps, which makes you see that reality. Right? So this is how method of teaching is developed in order to transfer the knowledge. So there was an article in Times of India. There has been about 100 years that theory of relativity, and there was a celebration. So that means there are very few, which hold the ground for such a long time. Otherwise they get revised. So therefore, that is a matter of celebration, because he was what a brilliant thinker he was, right? Now, through this process you come to know, and as I said, even if the more you ask scientists, we glorify scientists because they have a rigorous methodology. There is no doubt about it. They don't make loose statements, correct? But if you ask them themselves, how much do you know about the universe? They will, if the scientist is honest, they'll say actually very little. So many things are still just a question mark, waiting to be discovered. We think that the science is advanced so much, but if you ask somebody who's a real hardcore scientist, they know that so much is, and after a point, even if there is a lot of research, after a point there is so much which is still not known. So that means the whole thing is in the process of discovery. Now, but it doesn't matter, but we keep on looking and we keep on refining and we keep on learning more and more and more. That's lovely, that's fantastic. Okay? One thing that one has to see is that do human beings create knowledge? No. The knowledge is already there. Way before Einstein discovered time and space to be relative, time and space was already relative. Already the universe is made with time and space which are relative. It is we who had a veil, which is not knowing this reality, and we just went by our normal perception, inference, and we concluded that time and space is absolute. That is our conclusion. Until somebody used sophisticated inference and negated that. Based on perception, inference, and they negated that. Right? But we didn't create knowledge. We only lifted the veil. This is the very, very big. Einstein did not create time and space which is relative. Time and space was always relative. Einstein only lifted the veil and saw what the reality is. So therefore, the knowledge never rests on human being. Never. The only source of knowledge is Sarvajna Ishvara. The knowledge rests on Ishvara. This is where he says Maya. Maya means we come with a veil and we are given the potential to remove the veil, and we keep collapsing those potential, and we do wonderful job with, because we have that intelligence to remove the veils. But nobody has authorship to knowledge. No, not only Vedanta, any other knowledge. We have technology that once we have discovered right? Certain realities. We can use our creativity to create products. That we can do. Technology, that is called technology. Converting that knowledge into something which is applied. Right? But the knowledge does not rest on human being. Now, in the case of, so that means when we go to the trees and the program and how it works, it's already made. All the knowledge is already there. Human body already made. All the knowledge is already there. Through going to medical school, we only remove our ignorance. We have to use our free will to remove our ignorance. And you may choose to remove it in one area, somebody else may choose to remove it in some other area, and even in that area where you choose to remove, it's not ever going to be complete. And by choosing that area, the other things are still remaining hidden. So this is how the process of knowing is. That is what we call a product of Maya, the veil. Things are covered, realities are covered. Now, through this process you come to know things where the data comes from the senses. So through this process you can only know what things about the objects, which are what? Both through Indriya Pratyaksha you come to know objects of the world, and through Sakshi Pratyaksha you come to know what the things of the mind, what happens in the mind. The whole psychology is based on Sakshi Pratyaksha. And we keep using that and we keep refining it. And we keep lifting our veil, but there is one thing which is what all the things, whether it is Sakshi Pratyaksha or Indriya Pratyaksha, everything is in a constant flux. Everything is changing all the time. All your antakarana vrittis are changing, the external world is changing, the whole thing is what changing. There is one awareness which is I, because of which you come to know the changing conditions of the body and mind. Now the nature of that always remains veil. Why? Because this normal process of knowing, which is through the senses or what? Witness perception, that I is not available. So therefore, it always remains hidden. Even through a normal perception and inference, Ishvara is also not available. So therefore, Ishvara and I always remain hidden. Everything is hidden. But you can lift the veil about other things through perception and inference. And about Ishvara and I, you can't use the same process. If you want to continue to use the same process for knowing that, you'll never get there. This you must understand, because if you continue, because everything else you have known through this process, and if you want to continue to apply the same process for knowing Ishvara and the final reality, you'll never get there. So this is why you need an independent means of knowledge. The independent means of knowledge is what we call Vedanta Shastra. The words. The words are used to make you see something which is not a matter of objectifying. So even when you learn, and if you want to then objectify it, will you be able to objectify it? You will never be able to objectify it. And if your orientation is, until I objectify, I will not consider that I have known, then what? you yourself are restricting the scope of this whole study. So you have to understand that my normal process of knowing is not going to work here. So therefore, you have to begin to see the words with a fresh mind and see what Vedanta says and see whether it makes sense or not. And the minute you really put aside all your orientations and your expectations and your way of knowing, and when I know this, this is how I want to know it, that very orientation itself is wrong. So just as I know the sun or I know this, I want to know Atma, awareness. What will you do? You will make that awareness into just one of the objects of the universe. In that very expectation, what you are creating a distortion. Your mind doesn't reach what Shruti is trying to show you. So therefore, you listen to Shastra and Shastra uses all your experiences. And it uses a lot of logic to make you see what it wants you to see. The whole method of na iti is a very, very important method.
Na iti means what?
Means that you start your identity of I is this. So you have to shed. So there is a logic which is given for you to shed. Like I use that there are 5 elements. If 5 elements are not you, right? They combine together, they don't become I. So that means you still continue to think I am the body, then nobody can help you. And then to say that when the body goes, I will go, then nobody can help you. Because Shastra has, and because your conclusion is, as long as the body is there, I am there. Because of that, Shastra shows you that the body is not I. But in spite of that learning, if you continue to say, I am only there till the body is there, then nobody can help you. The changing nature of mind. So that means the mind and its vrittis are changing. And if you were the thought, then what will happen? You will never, when the thought comes, you will come. When the thought goes, you will go. Then who is a survivor? You will not have memory. Not possible. You will not have self-image. Not possible. So therefore, there is this invariable presence, pratibodha viditam matam, because of which you see all the changing thoughts of your mind. Even that changing thoughts of the mind themselves is done because of the mind. Without mind, you can't do it. But in the mind, there are 2 elements. Mind is, or a thought is like this table. The thought of that given thing, a tree, which is a form, and then there is a content. There is Satya Mithya relationship there. Wherever there is a thought, there is a form, and then there is a content. What is the content? Awareness. What is the form? That given thought.
Yeah.
That given thought.
Say that again, the thought and the content in the mind. I just want to hear it again.
Yeah, so that means thought in the mind, right, is like the table.
Okay.
It is what if I'm thinking of a tree, then what is there? There is a tree thought. Right? And if I'm thinking of a rabbit, then there is a rabbit thought.
Swami told some bird. He told one bird, Payamyam. What is Payamyam? He told no. Swami told one bird. What is that? That is we don't know. Okay. He asked one bird, he used one bird. Swami. Some word I don't know.
Yeah, he's some unknown word.
Unknown word.
So the thought is, whether it is of a known or a known, unknown or whatever, right? The thought is like the table. So that means what it has a content which is, let's say if I'm thinking of a tree, it's a tree thought. But what is the content of that thought? Can you have that thought without the presence of awareness? Awareness is equivalent to the wood,
Right, okay.
the content of that thought. So that means the vrittis keep changing. Now I'm thinking of Nita, next minute I'm thinking of Kashi, third minute I'm thinking of Swami, fourth minute I'm thinking of Bombay. The thoughts keep changing, they are changing. But the content of the thought is what? The awareness, which remains pratibodha viditam matam. Tree is replaced by rabbit, but awareness remains. Another form. So this is how, are you trying, you said, oh, I will understand awareness only when I find it without thoughts. You don't need to. Where will you remove awareness? If you want to remove awareness from everything else, you make that awareness what? Pure awareness, an object which is away from every other things in time and space. You are making it into an object without even realizing it. You want to experience it, but in that very experience, you are what? You are creating a confusion. You are not receiving Vedanta as it is meant to be received. You are given what? The world is with forms, and you have to figure out what? The content. You can't, can you say, I will only understand water when I remove all the waves? That is silly. And I just want pure water to be seen. Without anything. You never get it. Because this is how the arrangement is.
Also, water will also always have a form.
Always have a form.
No matter what you do with
Exactly.
it will always have a form.
Absolutely.
The same with consciousness, if you try to object, you still can't see it.
Absolutely.
Even if you objectify, you can't.
Absolutely.
That is not the
So
way to
this
see it.
is
truly
why
is.
people try to kind of, what they do is stop. This is why in yoga thinking the thought, stopping the thoughts is a big deal. Because then they think that by stopping the thoughts they will have pure awareness without the thoughts.
That's where this idea
That's
This
where
is
all-
where this idea comes from.
That's interesting.
So what we say is, in fact, that even when then you become silence. Awareness is equivalent to silence. So that means when the silence goes, what happens to awareness? It's still there. So this is a whole big catch that the yoga people, their idea is, the more and more I stop the thoughts, the more and more what I'm with awareness. What we say is, when the thought is there, awareness is there. When the thought is not there, when there is silence, awareness is there. Awareness is always there. You don't need to manipulate the mind and make it thoughtless in order to be in connection with awareness. Pratibodha viditam matam. Right? It's always there. In fact, it doesn't depend upon your thinking or not thinking. It's Jagat Karanam Brahma. It is from where the time has come. Even if you're not thinking, somebody else is thinking. And we all share one awareness. You see the silliness of this whole idea? Millions of people are thinking and we all share only one awareness. You're stopping. How is it going to help? It's silly. If you follow the logic, it's silly. Awareness is free. This is a fact. You don't have to manipulate anything. You just need to understand it. That whole manipulation puts you on a trip. I want to experience that expanse. I want to experience the thoughtlessness. That means you're hooked for life. This is no matter who does what. Every form and these billions of thoughts which are going on don't touch awareness. This is knowledge.
I have a question. Shall I ask it now?
Yeah.
So what exactly happens at the point when we say enlightenment has happened?
Yeah. So when what we say as so-called enlightenment is that the veil is totally lifted. So that means you see the nature of I totally clearly, not with all these confusions, expectations, vagueness, doubt, and it is as clear as daylight. So that means that what is communicated, what is the vision of Vedanta is exactly what your mind captures.
Clarity.
There is a total clarity. So for example, you go to a college and the teacher is teaching you, let's say if you are studying economics or whatever, or finance, the teacher is teaching you some theories and all, right? All the students are sitting and listening to the teacher. At the end of the month, the teacher gives you an exam and asks you little bit tricky questions and everybody starts answering. Somebody gets 50 marks, somebody gets 70 marks, somebody gets 80 marks. Can you say that nobody understood anything? No. But the person, let's say one person gets 100 marks. That means whatever the teacher is asking, even in slightly tricky way, the person has figured it out. That means there is a total clarity. So that means that person has total clarity, everybody else has what? Partial clarity. Right? And you have to work and work and work until it becomes what? Total clarity. So this is what we call, in every knowledge, what we call, it is vritti jnanam. There is no knowledge which is without the mind. This is why human birth is considered such an important thing, because in the human mind is capable of figuring it out. If you had a more primitive mind, you can't figure it out. So you need mind. Mind is where all the knowledge takes place. And mind is within mithya. But wherever there is mithya, there is satyam. So therefore, what this whole thing is, the mind listens to Vedanta Shastra, tries to figure it out, tries to put the whole vision together, gets some part, other parts are unclear, inquires about that. Then what happens? There is a clarity emerging when, as I told you, that last piece is put together, there is a complete clarity. That means there is in your vritti, what has arisen as reality is exactly corresponding to the reality. There is no gap. That is what we call clarity of knowledge. Until then, it is growing clarity. It's not total ignorance either. Yeah. So, this is where he says that the Maya, the method, and here it is what, when you know the absolute reality, then you cross, you're at the other side of the Maya. Why? Because the veil is completely lifted. As I said in my first class, the wave not understands one's vagueness, but also understands what two more realities, what the presence of the ocean and the presence of the water. These are realities. They have nothing to do with your imagination. Right? So this is what he says, and once they cross the reality, mame vage prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Once you are on the other side of the Maya, then what? Once you know that all that is here is water, then what? You can say what? that both the ocean and the wave enjoy one reality, and that reality is water. You're on the other side of Maya. Continuing to be in that form, the reality is shifted. Right? Through your mind, you have understood a lot more than just what perception and inference can do. Through using a means of knowledge, without which nobody can figure it out. You need a means of knowledge. Right? So there he says, and they gave me.
It's difficult to cross.
It's difficult to cross, yeah, exactly.
In case of Buddha, we hear that he went and sat and meditated and enlightenment came to him. So in this case, what's the external source of knowledge?
Yeah, that's a good point. See now, I mean, for a lot of people, they believe that Buddha was enlightened. But for Adi Shankaracharya, one of the biggest opponents was Buddha.
Oh.
Yeah, so there, so that means his conclusions, or at least the way it appears in the Bhashyam, were discarded. And in fact, the history is, at one point, almost 80% of India had become Buddhist. Ashoka converted, and a lot of other people converted. And Adi Shankaracharya then won all the debates with Buddhist, and that's when Hinduism was, he revived Hinduism. Yeah, and he revived, and he was a big contribution.
But are there really fundamental contradictions between Buddhist beliefs and Vedanta?
So Surya keeps saying that he has read a lot about Tibetan Buddhism, and he says that there are a lot of similarities. But the traditional Buddhist that we study in the Bhashyam, they certainly have a different view. They have a different view of reality.
There is a basic, there is no God.
Exactly. In their thing, there is no God. Right? They just talk about the final thing. And final thing is also not as Brahman but nothingness. So whole world is mithya. It's nothing is so real, and ultimately there is nothingness. So what we argue with them is that from nothing everything cannot come. That logically contradicts. And one thing in this universe you can't deny, which is what? The presence of I am. Even that you can't deny. Even the negator is what? It is there.
It's insisting that.
Exactly.
When I say I am not here.
I am not here, exactly. And then, okay, mithya, but how did this whole thing come about? Right? Even there, the presence of Ishvara, the intelligence from which all these as though objects come and they organize together,
How
even
do
that
they
is not
explain
there.
it?
So they just say that everything is just kind of unreal. And once you say it is unreal, you don't need to know why. It doesn't bother them. All you need to know it is that it's just an appearance, it's not there. That's what they emphasize. This is what,
Is that where the idea of the world being an illusion comes from?
Exactly. A lot of these ideas come from, they get mixed up with Buddhism, absolutely. Even that detachment, because their whole thing is, the world is not real, right? And you are taking it to be real, so now you have to be detached from the world. Lot of these ideas actually come from Buddhism.
Even the meditation
It's a
and
circle of suffering.
Emptying your mind.
Buddhist meditation
Buddhist.
teaches you that.
Exactly.
And it's a monastic, let's say, kind of
Oh,
pursuit.
yeah. There's belief in renunciation as well. Right?
Very strong.
Yeah.
Only through becoming a monk you can get. I'm not speaking of the modern version of Buddhism which have entered and edulcorated and simplified and so on. But
Original language.
this monkhood is very important.
And here there's Vedanta doesn't have that requirement.
See, as I told you that both lifestyles are possible, right? Sannyasa and Karma Yoga. And in fact, Lord Krishna encourages Karma Yoga because in order to understand that reality, you need to work on, you need alignment at so many previous levels before this bigger picture becomes clear. and your interaction with the world gives you an opportunity to do those corrections.
Now to go on the other side, because I want to be fair, just very briefly what I have read. The version of this Buddhism that we see here in the West or in India are like some other version. When you go to the source and you look at the traditional texts of Dzogchen or Tibetan Buddhism, and Vajrayana and so on, you have also some kind of meditation which involves some kind of divinities and asking for the grace, asking for the invoking their presence and so on. Different form also, and there are a lot of prayers. So see, whatever version we have here available, we don't know what it is. And also maybe there are so many different versions of Buddhism also. You see, so that also is another maybe also explanation. So it's like a big word for so many, I think, schools, and the schools that Shankaracharya met at his time, then they were the schools that he could negate very easily. So maybe there were other schools who were not prevalent, he didn't meet them. If we would have engaged and if they were agreeing on certain points, then it's okay. But whatever he had access to, then he negated because it was not done.
Because they do believe in this whole idea of karma and
Because they took from Hinduism,
They took
right?
a lot.
Yeah,
from
they
it.
took a
No,
lot.
historically you have to know that Buddha was a Vedic guy.
After
He was born
other people
in a Vedic, let's say, family, and he received instruction into all these Vedic rituals, and he got some, let's say, teacher, which then he was not comfortable with for any, whatever reason. We don't know exactly what he was taught, the manner he was taught, and he rejected the whole, let's say, Vedic. So here also we don't know what he was exposed to. You see? But he was born and nourished by this environment. So that we should never forget. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, so let's move to the next. So it is difficult to cross. So it requires a lot of grace, right? So just as for every source, for every knowledge, the source is Sarvagna Ishvara. For this also, what is the source? Also Ishvara. Now imagine the source of knowledge, which is Ishvara, like every other source, and you don't even accept the entity called Ishvara. Where is the match? When will you understand this? And what is needed is alignment all the way with Ishvara. How far are you from this knowledge? It will never bless you. This is why this Neo-Vedanta and some kind of awareness, it's a dangerous thing. There is some flying in some bubble. Right? So this is where you need that relationship with Ishvara. And this is what he says in the next verse. He says, Namam dushkrutino mudaha prapadyante naradamaha maya yaya prapajnana asuram bhavamashritaha. So if you miss these two essential realities of your true nature and the presence of Ishvara, and you continue to live as form being your real nature, then what happens is you have become so small by default, right? And when you become small, what is going to be the nature of your interaction with the universe? Small. And this is what he said, that if you have given, then you cannot be, because you have you have that smallness, and there is a lack resulting from that smallness, and you are depending upon the universe for your fulfillment. And when you are depending on that object for your fulfillment, and if you don't get that object, a frustration is what? Inevitable. How are you going to change? Nothing. You can't change anything fundamentally. You're dependent on what I'm looking for my fulfillment through relationships, and relationships don't happen the way I want them to happen. Nothing actually happens very much exactly according to the way we want. By the 30s and 40s, we all realize that. And then everything, midlife crisis starts coming. As a teenager, you believe the whole, what world is in your hands. And then you start seeing so many things you actually really have no control over. So this is where, then more, and if you don't have this vision, frustration is inevitable. Sense of being victim in the world is inevitable. Self-blame and self-inadequacy, inevitable. So this is what he says, that if you choose to stay within this, Maya upahrat jnana. If you choose to retain that veil, what happens? Asuram bhavam ashritaha. Okay, so that means the pursuits, the normal sense pursuits will become what? The prime focus in your life. You lose the sense of dharma because they begin to rule you, and then all kinds of entanglements will start happening. And this is how you see lives of people. You don't need to believe in Vedanta. Go and observe lives of people. And you will see that, how entangled the lives are. Right? So this is what he says. And then the more frustrations, then what will you do? What is going to be the nature of your actions? Your implicit thing is that of dissatisfaction. Through that you judge situations, and through that you act. You go deeper in the spiral. So this is what he says, they are robbed of their discrimination, and what they resort to sense pursuits, and they live a deluded life, more and more entangled.
More and more wrong decisions.
More and more wrong decisions, exactly. And then sadness. So this is what, a typical thing is that imagine you start an enterprise and you want it to succeed, and then somehow you use all the, let's say some people don't, shortcuts and everything. So in the short run it may work, but in the long run what will happen? All the things will, because you are going against dharma, things will start, either it is a competition, how it will come you don't know. Right? The competition will have better product, or there's so many different ways in which difficulties start coming. Right? Or you borrowed money for, this also happens when you are doing very well, you borrow a lot of money from the bank for starting some new activity. And then the new activity goes, but you find yourself with a huge, he's a banker, he knows. You give loans to all these, and how many people get stuck? What? Malaya, Vijay Malaya. So therefore you see all that when you come and give proposals and all, and you impress them, and these people come suited, booted and very eloquent, and so what the banks feel what? Impressed. And then what the whole thing is, that any foundation which is not a strong foundation is going to fall. It may survive. Exactly. There are so many different ways in which it will collapse. But when it collapses, then what do? You again, instead of trying to, before it leads to a huge collapse, it starts giving you clues. And it starts, you start realizing that, hey, things are a little bit shaky. But instead of changing the fundamentals, what do? You try to just try to make small changes, small. So you put lot of pressure on your staff and you make them feel as though they are not being productive. This is how we behave. And then what we create? More dissatisfaction among the staff, and we increase our fall by what? Wrong methods and not addressing the real issues. So this is what life, and then it keeps you, gets you more and more into trouble in life. So this is how most of the people choose. So that means people say, yeah, so why should I remove ignorance about myself? This is a cost. So nobody can be indifferent to removing the ignorance, right? Now for that ignorance, as I told you, that Maya, that covering is within Ishvara, the knowledge of reality is also within Ishvara. When what veil gets lifted is also within the laws of Ishvara. So you need Ishvara in Vedanta. So therefore, he says the first step is to come to some understanding of Ishvara, without which you will never be blessed with this knowledge. So the next one, a verse, is talking about that there are 4 types of people who worship me. Here he says, Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukrutino juna arto jigna surathathi nani chavat bharatarshabha. He says there are 4 types of people who bhajante mam, means they are devoted to me. This is, he is talking about cat, it being Ishvara. You saw a cat. You saw a cat?
No,
We made some clapping sound.
There's a cat. Okay. So here he says the 4 are Artaha, Jignasu, Artharthi and Jnana. Okay. Who is an Arti? Arti is the one. Artha. Wow. Artha is the one who is only when you are in trouble, then what? You remember Ishvara. There are so many people when everything is going well, they think they are in charge. And when some crisis comes, then look up. Right? Please help. So this is what, and then they start praying. And then after everything is little bit settled, then again forget. So this is what we call Aarti, right? So that means they are looking up to Ishvara when they are in trouble. So there are many people like that, and he says that's fine, there is no problem, right? Now there is a second who is a little bit more clever, and he is Artharthi. Who is Artharthi? That the person knows very well that I have so many things that I want, right, in every domain of my life. I want to accomplish so much, I want to have good relations, I want to have good wife, I want to have nice children, I want to have good grandchildren. You have so much agenda in life, right? And for everything that you want, you can do many things on your own, right? Using your own, if you want to earn good money, you can go to school, you can get skills, you can start a company, you can work in some company, you can start a small business. I mean, there are so many different ways in which you have your own methods of getting what you want. But you also, if you are little clever, you know that in each of these things, something may or may not happen your way. Something can go wrong. Something, will go. It's amazing. Even many times I hear that when 2 people decide to separate, and many people said, when we looked at that couple, we never would have guessed that they were not getting along. Right? So that means that there is an external facade and then inside there are all problems. So in more ambitions you have, what more you are adding uncertainties to your life. Because in each of those domains there is no guarantee that things will happen your way. So in addition to doing what you do, these artharthi, what they do, they ask for help in every domain. So that means that in the relationship I can pray, then if I want a promotion I can pray, if I want my kid to get into some university I will pray. I will use, it's a tool that is available to me. Because there are known variables and then there are unknown variables. For unknown variables you have no option. There are some unknown variables, through your efforts you can make them known, which is good. You have to use that also. Something you overlooked, but you can take it into account. But if you really think about the causes within causes within causes within causes, there is at no given point in time you will know all the causes which are going to influence the result. So therefore, you need Ishvara as your accomplice. So you can pray. For everything you can pray. So therefore, this kind of a person is called Artharthi. Then there is one more person who is a Jignasu. Who is a Jignasu? Jignasu is the person who says, okay, now getting this and getting that and this and that, hey, ultimately it is not going to really satisfy me. So the person then is asking, hey, but what is the nature of this Ishvara that I'm praying at the time of trouble and also using as an accomplice through my prayer? What is the nature of that Ishvara? Only few people ask that question. And that person is called Jignasu. Gnatum Ichu. Most of the time you ask people, even if they say they are believers, you ask them, what is this Ishvara? They give you all vague ideas. And this is what Neeta was saying, that that she grew up not believing because none of the ideas seemed tenable. And that's true, because they themselves are not clear about what is Ishvara. So they can't really convince any thinking person about Ishvara. Right? So that Jignasu is the one who is not satisfied with some vague idea of Ishvara and relating to that some vague idea of Ishvara. Even in a normal relationship, if I know you very vaguely, will I be able to enter into a proper relationship with you? No. If I want to have a proper relationship with you, I have to invest in you and I need to get to know you. So if you want to have a proper relationship with Ishvara, you need to invest in knowing what is that Ishvara so that you can have proper relationship with it. You can't afford to have partial understanding, because that very partial understanding will affect your relationship. So Jignasu is the one who wants to know Ishvara. And Lord Krishna says, who is the fourth devotee? Jnani. The person who knows, the person who has crossed Maya, can you say the person knows what both are water, so who cares about the ocean? That wise person is not a wise person, right? That enlightened wave knows that there is an entity called the ocean. And in fact, until it got to this point where the reality of water was revealed, the entire alignment happened within what? The ocean. The knowledge is from the ocean, because Ishvara is not confused about this reality. For whom it is, Ishvara is on the other side of the Maya, is a wheeler of the Maya. You are what? Under the spell of Maya. So you need to cross. So So for crossing you need help.
So he knows the truth always.
Yeah, he knows, and this is why the teaching is from Ishvara. Here the teaching is from Ishvara that hey, between you and me there is no difference. Where does this teaching come? Awareness is just actionless. Teaching doesn't come from awareness. Jiva is confused. Teaching cannot be from Jiva because there is a veil. The teaching has to be from Ishvara.
How did the original teaching come about?
So the original teaching, as we saw, that the realities are already there. Now there is a first discoverer of that reality. So even in other things, right? Imagine here you can call Einstein as the first discoverer of the reality of time space being what? Relative. So he is called the Rishi, the first one to remove the veil. And why did Einstein, it only got removed for him and not for anybody else? Because he had spent hours and hours and hours dedicating. Otherwise it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I know, but we
So,
say that you
sharp
need an
mind.
external source of knowledge in this case, right?
So this is why. So here in this case, but the knowledge which is there, which is already a reality through senses, right, got revealed to Einstein. After that, it was what? The methodology which carried it forward. So in this case, Einstein was a Rishi, but what did he use? His perception and inference. In this case, what the person who first discovered this reality is called Rishi. To him, it got revealed. To that person, this reality got revealed, and then came the subsequent methodology. But how? Not through this perception and inference. This is why they say they were mantra drashtaraha. They saw the mantras, and to them the meaning of the mantras were revealed.
They saw the mantra.
They saw the mantras means they received the mantras. So for example, all these Vedic mantras
It is
that we
found in the
chant,
space.
so
It is found in
the Vedic mantras are received by the rishis. This is why they are all the entire Vedic, all these mantras that we chant, there are no authors. They are rishis who saw these mantras. They were revealed to them because they had that preparedness. Just as Einstein had that preparedness, they had that preparedness.
So even
The
though
mantra,
they didn't have the methodology, they were living their life already in alignment with Ishvara, and that's why
this, exactly. So therefore, this knowledge got revealed to them. And then, what
Very
it,
enlightened.
sorry?
Enlightened, they worked
They
it.
saw, exactly. They worked on themselves, and to them this mantras got revealed, and then the methodology developed as to what, and in that methodology also it evolves over a period of time. Because if you look at Adi Shankaracharya, most of his opponents are, in his Bhashyam, he's arguing with Sankhya, he's arguing with Yoga, Vaisheshika, Nayayika, two schools of Buddhism. These are his opponents. And even within this thing, what Mandana Mishra, and there were some other Karmatha with whom he was engaging in argument. But now, for example, if you are teaching, so in those times the sciences were not well developed, right? But now when our teacher teaches, he looks at what? Psychology, he looks at quantum physics, he looks at neurosciences. So that means this is the creativity. In the methodology, you can refine it, and you can actually incorporate a lot of knowledge of the contemporary time.
He looks
Again,
also
which
at
is
the
very
theology, the Christian theology and so on.
So why is it not possible now for someone to actually live a good life and have that revelation come to them?
So that means that it is like saying, somebody saying that just as Einstein got this, I can also potentially get it. Why should I go to school and study and go through this methodology?
No, that's true, but is it theoretically possible?
So theoretically, see, I don't know whether it is, I mean theoretically even the other person can figure out, but it is silly to when methodology is available to you and it is
Not
so
use it.
sophisticated and you don't use it and you wait for what something else to emerge. So Ishvara will laugh. He's saying, I'm revealing more through this teacher, you're rejecting it, but you want to have some other method. Right? So this is where, through your own thing, you either lengthen the process or you deny yourself the process. So there is a nice story which, where there is, that there was one devotee who was really devoted to Ishvara and he was in a village. Okay? And in that village, there were once it started raining. So then it was raining for 1 day, 2 days, and it really was going to be flooded, right? So then everybody got scared and they started leaving the village. So this devotee said, no, you guys, you can go, Ishvara will save me. Right? Huh?
Yeah, we've heard this.
You've heard this story. So then what everybody was, then the water started rising, many people started leaving, more and more people started leaving. Then there were warnings, the next village people came and they said, you have to evacuate. Then the government servants came and they said, you have to evacuate. What water levels were rising. And every time people came and people came and people came, and to tell him that, hey, now you have to leave, now you have to leave. And he kept saying, no, but Ishvara will come and save me. Then when the thing was so high, then finally helicopter came and they said, come, we are going to airlift you and all. He says, no, Ishvara will save me. Then what happened? The person drowned. So when the person drowned and died, this is a story, right? Then he goes to Ishvara and says, what is this? I'm your devotee, everybody got saved, and I'm drowned and I died. What kind of justice is this? So what did Ishvara say?
I sent you so
I
many
said
failures.
so many things. You refused. It's because you were expecting something else to come. In that expectation, you didn't see me.
So many hints.
So many things. I came to
Not
help
even
you
hints.
first in
Nothing
the...
heavy.
Yeah.
For us, there are so many hints. When you explain it,
Yeah.
we see the hints.
Yeah.
Ishvara being around us.
So you have to help yourself to this knowledge. When it is available, you have to help yourself. This is how also Ishvara then continues that whole lineage, Guru Shishya Parampara. So that Gnani cha Bharatarshava. Now, the next verse. Here it's a beautiful verse. Should I stop now? It's
6:30.
I'm worried
6:30.
about, we finish all this before.
Yeah.
It's quite a bit. I guess you know better. Sorry.
Yeah. So all this I
No,
never
we all know.
leave anything half, so
Yes,
we
that's-
will finish. So that is not a problem. But should I do, no, or maybe now it's enough for
6:30.
today, right? It's enough for today. So I will do it tomorrow. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Guru Namaha. Hari Om.